Hey guys, welcome back to the Colloquy. Today we have a very special guest, friend, veteran, husband, father, finance guy, Mike Mendez. He's the founder of the Regular G.I. Joe podcast. He also is the reason why we even have a YouTube channel right now.
Yay!
Yes.
Thanks, Mike.
He was one of the people that encouraged us to go ahead and do it, and we did it, and we are so happy we did.
Yes,
So
we are.
without further ado, we're going to bring Mike to the stage. What's going on,
What's
Mike?
up, Mike?
What's going on, guys? How we doing today?
We good,
Good,
bro.
how are
We
you?
good. We're excited to have you on, man. So many questions we have, but we're gonna try to keep our excitement down to a minimum because this guy knows a little bit about everything.
Yes.
I think once you start this time.
All right, Mike. We're fellow veterans just like you. So what would you say your journey into the military, what did it teach you about being a man?
I mean, it one taught me that I didn't know what a man was. So one of the first things for me being in the military was I was very uncomfortable with being around other men, how we talked, how we treated each other. I'm raised by a single mother, only child, women in my life. So I was very feminine. And I would, honestly think when the guys would be making fun of each other that they were making fun of me or they didn't like me. And I couldn't handle that. I really had a hard time understanding, no, that's just how we talk. And maybe the way I was acting was probably not conducive to what a man is. And so therefore they were ostracizing me on purpose. So I really learned that I don't know what a man is, and it was very hard for me at first.
Dang. Well, that's a lot of honesty.
Yeah.
And that's rare. That's rare because I think that I've talked about this before. We know it's almost like an innate thing. You could pick up when a guy is not very comfortable in his masculinity. And I don't like the way that we treat men that act that way. Instead of bringing them in, we kind of push them away. And I don't know if that's a biological thing or it's a cultural thing. And that's something we can talk about. I'm not sure, but I've seen it done. But I've tried to go out of my way to grab those guys and kind of bring them in and just make them feel like, look, man, I get it. I see what you are. I don't tell them this, obviously, but I know what you are. I see what you are, but you're safe with me, and try to give them that comfortable feeling. I think also in the military, you're there with a hyper masculine, hyper male dominated, culture, and only the strong survive. It's like if you're weak, if you're weak, you're going to get pushed to the bottom of the pack. And that's the kind of way it works. What do you think about from a female standpoint?
Well, I guess what my question is before I even share anything else is how do you overcome that? If that's something that, that you experienced, Mike, and even you, Marcus, how as a man, how do you overcome, like you said, you don't know what it is, you've not really been around it. So how do you go about overcoming that?
Yeah, I think you don't quit, but luckily for me, I was in a contract where I couldn't, so I couldn't just leave. I couldn't just Yeah, it was one of the ones where you're forced to be there, right? You have to be there. Why? I'm under a 4-year contract. I mean, whatever. I legally could not leave. I couldn't go home. I had no choice but to adapt. And it did take a while. So, I mean, during my first tour in Iraq, I remember being there and all the guys get together. I would have a friend, me and him would talk. And then when we got together, he would make fun of me. And I didn't understand what that meant. I really thought I'd be hurt. And that's the honest thing. I'd be like, man, my feelings are hurt, man. I didn't know how to vocalize that or communicate that with him. And I didn't understand what he was doing either. But I was like, man, I thought we're friends. And I was really hurt by that, not understanding. No, we actually are really good friends. And that's why you're doing it to me. Because I need to know as a man, can I give it to you and can you take it? And how quick-witted are you? Those things. To the point now, if someone's coming here and make fun of me, I'm like, all right, man, let's do this one. Let's have a verbal argumentation in a sense. But in the same sense, I can tell the difference when I see another man and he's like kind of either he gets offended. I'm like, hey, were you raised by a mother only? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, I had the same issue. And then at that point, I'm very vulnerable. And I think that lets them know too as well. Like, hey, man, I get it. You're 20 something. You've never really been around a lot of men. This is how we act. Like Marcus said, it's alpha male. It's only strong survive. And if I smell weakness, I'm going to attack it. I'm not going to try to foster a relationship. I'm just going to straight up attack. So I think not giving up is mainly the best part.
I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
And so you have these dominance hierarchies among men, and I have a hard time explaining it to women, but men get it. And if you put 5 guys in the room for 5 minutes, within 5 minutes, there's a dominance hierarchy already established. First is going to be by physicality, who's the biggest, who's the strongest. Then it's going to be by virtue of maybe financial, because we're older, like who has more money, who has more status. These are the things that happen. We're animals at the end of the day. And I think that people take that like, my first book was about toxic masculinity. And I think people take that as men being like dumb or ignorant, but no, it really is a reason for it. because when the fit hits the shan, you need to know who's gonna fold and who's not gonna fold.
Yeah.
These are the things that when a woman is picking a mate, she needs to know he can eat, either he can stand it or he can't. And these are the things that we have to go through as men, but we also have to learn how to, not push the weaker guys away, but also bring them in, because you need those guys. At the end of the day, you're going to need those guys. So it's up to us to make them stronger. And I think we've gotten away from that as a society. We more so just ostracize more than bring in. But I think my time in the military was very easy for me because I grew up with a strong masculine father. So I kind of I understood. I played a lot of sports. You know how that is. I understood those dominance hierarchies, and I knew how to move up and down that ladder really easily. And so a lot of young men like yourself do struggle. I've supervised them. I've mentored them. They really do struggle in those, because that's where a lot of the deletions and depression, anxiety, all that stuff comes in.
Yeah. I think what Mike said was key, paying it forward. Like you said, even you recognizing that in another man, like were you raised by, single parent household, not have a dad around, and you recognize that, and you can even, start to mentor and pour into, that. So that's good.
But I mean, it still affects me to this day. Like growing up without a dad, it still some affects me. Like I barely learned this year that you got to like run your water heater once a year. I didn't know you had to flush that thing. So like that still affects me to this day. I'm 38 years old. There's, I'm glad I have a wife who understands that there's just some things I don't know. When it comes to basic things that you might have been taught. Like I know how to do an oil change, but I'm going to probably look on YouTube first before I hop in there and do oil change, right? Like, if there's assistance needed, it's more like I can be more logical and more protective and fighting. But if it's like, hey, I got car trouble, I'm like, dude, I got a phone, I got YouTube. That's my assistance at that point. And it still affects me to this day. So it's not like something like it's something you have to go over with. And a lot of times I just give myself grace and be like, who was here to teach me this? There's obviously things you're not going to know.
Well, I think so. We call it the 4 P's: protection, procreation, provision, and problem solving. Problem solving is the one where most men in a situation like yours will fall off. But you looking on YouTube is problem solving. Like you saying, I don't know, but I'm going to find out is problem solving. And I think a lot of men think they have to have all the answers to be a good husband, be a good father. It's just not true. Being married 23 years, I have two grown sons, 22 and 20. And I'm telling you, when they were born, I was 23 years old. What do you know at 23? Absolutely nothing. So you think you know, but you don't know. So you have to learn those things. And part of my problem solving has always been to be honest with my wife about the situation. Hey, look, I don't know what we're going to do, but I'm going to figure it out. Let me go do what I got to do. I'm going to figure this thing out. Having all the answers is just some alpha male bull crap. It's not true. There's no way that you can have an answer to every scenario. Like a couple was about a year ago, my AC started doing this weird thing where if the lights went out, it would revert back and it just start blowing hot air in the house. The whole house was like 90 degrees. I'm not an HVAC technician. I don't know nothing about that crap. And I didn't want to spend the money. So what did I do? I went to YouTube, found a video, 5-minute video, fixed it just like that. Did I not solve the problem?
Yeah.
The problem was solved, right? I didn't have to know the answer to everything. I knew where to go to get the answer. And I think that's where a lot of young men mess up, is they feel like they have to have all these things in place. You just got to have contingencies in place to be that masculine leader in your home. And nobody can really tell you what it looks like. It really depends upon the relationship that you have with your wife and what kind of your belief system, all those things factor into it. So that's a really interesting take you had there. I really like that.
Yeah. And I think women that put the pressure on their man to be you have to know everything, they're liar faces too, because we all have a deficit. Like I think if you can have a mom and dad in your home and you're still going to have voids, you're still going to have holes. There's still going to be a deficit, because just because you have mom and dad there, maybe they're not good, or maybe they don't know, or maybe they're flawed, or whatever. Yeah. So we all have deficits. We all have things that we have to overcome. So I think we have to, like you said, Mike, give yourself grace, but one another in a relationship, you have to give your partner and your mate grace as well.
Yeah.
So
I think for me, Mike, I come from the backwoods of Mississippi. Like I'm so country. Like I hadn't even had Chinese food when I Like when I joined the military, it was like you ate what mama cooked and that was it, or what you killed and that's what that's what you ate. So I had cultural deficits I had to overcome, and then like social things I had to overcome.
Yeah.
Where I'm from, your word is your word. So if you say you're gonna be somewhere at a certain time or do something, you do it, and that is your word. And having to learn how to deal with people that were deceptive and people that will lie or cheat and steal, I trusted everybody. And I really had to learn that. And that was from a 2-parent, great home, all the things. I still had deficits. So I think that's just part of the hero's journey as a man, is getting over those deficits.
Yep.
Sure.
So let's fast forward a little bit. So now you have a wife and 2 beautiful kids. When you were thinking about getting married, like what were some of your thought processes when it came to dating and marrying?
Well, it was completely wrong in a sense. And the reason why I say that is like the man I am today and the man I look at marriage is completely different. Like we've been together 11 years, married 11 years, and I'm barely figuring out the idea that like I'm not here to provide solutions for my wife. Like, and I'm learning that right now. I've learned that communication skill where it's like, hey, my advice is this one. Let me help you with your problem, not solve all your problems. Let me listen to you really, instead of being like, no, I know how to fix that. Instead of being like, well, here's some way to kind of talk about it and navigate it. That's what I'm learning right now as a person who's married for 11 years, being like, okay, how do we communicate? So I think like back then, man, it was like, I like you, you like me. I think about you, with you, and think about you with somebody else makes me mad. Okay, that's a pretty good relationship at like 25, 26 when me and my wife got married. And I had already had a previous marriage that failed already. So I was kind of like, I was overcompensating. One of the best things that I think about from a marriage perspective is like I tell my wife, man, like I'm so glad you're not the woman I met, and I'm so glad I'm not the man you met, because it is so dope. And I'm a real big fan of marriage, as you can tell. One of the best things I think, even when you're talking about like a deficit, my wife didn't have a cookbook, she didn't have a binder, she didn't have a recipe. She has that now, and so it's like, man, imagine when we're in our 80s and 90s, and grandma has always been the best baker. I'm like, oh, I got to see that growth. So to me, like, what is it into marriage, man? I think it's the dopest thing in the world because it's a constant growth, man. We're always growing to each other. Sometimes that causes us to grow a different direction. And so that's even more work to sit there and say, okay, cool. Why are we miscommunicating? But man, I say for me, like what it is about marriage and kind of that now, man, it's picking the right partner, man. It's finding somebody that like I said, I don't know how to do something. She's not making fun of me. She's not doing that. She's like, cool, let's go on YouTube together. Let's figure it out together. And when she's like, I don't know how to cook on something, I'm like, why don't you try making cookies? Let's try baking some things and let's actually have some fun in life. So that's my thing right now is like, man, marriage is dope. And when I look at marriage now, and if I was to tell myself, maybe someone younger, I would be like, man, like you got to really have a partner and you got to really understand what the word partner means before you start thinking about marriage. Because her thinking her with somebody else and she thinks about you with someone else and that makes y'all mad. Man, that ain't gonna last. So, you know what I mean? Because that's an emotional thing. So really my thing is like, do you got someone, and luckily for me, after getting out of the military, we went into massive debt. Getting out of the military, had a big problem, had a lot of mental issues, had suicidal ideations, suicide attempts and shit like that. But one thing we really found out was she's right there with me. So I always tell her, like, if we ever go poor again, I got you, I'm good. I already know I got my partner. I'm great. Like, now it's a money situation. We're good. So mine's a little bit different now.
I think
that's awesome, Mike.
I think next week is our wedding anniversary, and we'll be 23 years, 24 together, 3 kids, a lot of water under the bridge, Mike. A lot of water under the bridge. Yeah. And I can unequivocally tell you, your attitude towards marriage now is what will get you to the 80-year-old grandpa. Because you realize you have all these people talking on this application that we're on right now, and they don't even know. They don't know what it takes to have a good, healthy marriage. And it can't be, I pay the bills and you cook the meals and you have sex with me when I want. And, all these weirdo, this is weirdo stuff because they don't understand what it takes to actually make a marriage work. You have to learn to listen to your significant other. There has to be a large amount of mutual respect between you two. There's got to be that. And if you don't have that, you don't have anything. Because I'm telling you something. Like you said, we've had money, been broke, had money again, been broke again, had money again, and then been broke again, and now we got money. And so, like, we've had all that in 23 years. We've been through all of that. We've been through, you know, sickness, illness, kids having issues, you know, parents getting older, all these things. Let me tell you something about money. Money is great, but money don't solve all your problems. Because that's at some point, I tell young men this all the time, life is going to punch you in the mouth, and no amount of money is going to be able to save you. No amount of sex is going to be able to save you. No, you're going to have to face it head on. And then why not have a partner there right beside you to help face that down?
Absolutely.
And I've had one for 24 years, and that's the best things for life. Sliced bread. This woman's amazing. I wouldn't trade anything for it unless it was a tricked out tundra. Anyway, but
you got to put that hat to the side and be like, "What are you talking about now?"
Mike, it's about to get ugly.
Yeah, it's gonna we're gonna be just fine. What do you think, Mama?
He ain't seen none.
What do you think, Mama?
Oh, I love it. I love what you both are saying about marriage. And I think we talk about this all the time. I remember way back in the day taking psychology in college, and my professor was teaching us that, communication is a relationship. And I think the thing that will stop a relationship quicker than anything else is when you stop talking, when you stop having conversations, no matter how difficult they are. Like, no topic or subject should be taboo in your relationship. You have to keep talking. And even if it's, I am pissed off at you right now and I don't even want to see your face, but I need a minute. Like, even if I'm communicating that, if that's where I'm at least you know, okay, man, she mad. Let me let her have a minute. But when you stop talking and you build those walls up, those walls get reinforced over time, and it gets harder and harder to tear those walls down. So, yeah, I love everything that both y'all said. Communication has to be something that you prioritize throughout the duration of your relationship, no matter what.
Yeah. And if you start talking, it's a wrap. You know, as you know, we're marriage coaches, and we have sat down, we've sat down with well over 250 couples at this point. And so we have a lot of data to support what we say. A lot of people don't know that, and they think we're just talking out of our rear ends. No, we have a lot of data to support things that we say. And I can tell you unequivocally that communication is the number one reason why people don't make it. It's got nothing to do with sex. It's got nothing to do with money.
Not all the other stuff.
Those are factors, but communication is the way you speak to me, the way you make me feel when you speak to me, the way I feel when you speak to me. I think as men, our number one path of communication has to be respect laden. And I think respect is going out the window now when it comes to the way I'll speak for how men feel, and then you can speak for how women feel.
Sure.
So I think when a woman speaks to a man disrespectfully, it automatically puts him into a defensive posture. And if you go into a relationship or match with your fist up, you're already lost. You've already lost. You go into a scenario with your wife with your fist up and you feel like I'm going to have to fight for my life right now, you've automatically lost. And so it's important that I would say to any woman watching this to watch your words and be careful how you speak to a man, because we go out there and get the crap kicked out of us every day. I'm not coming home and getting the crap kicked out of me again. That's just not going to happen. And so that's something that we've always been careful about, is just that respect, and on both sides, mutual respect. But what would you say for a man speaking to a woman?
For a man speaking to a woman, I think it's important that the woman feels like she is a priority in that moment and that he's paying attention to her. I think one of the things that irritates us the most is when we're competing with your phone or with the game that's on or with anything else that's going on in your head, making us feel like we are a priority in that moment so that we can voice how we feel or kind of where we're at is super vital. So
we have ground rules. Like for arguments, we have ground rules. Like one of them is no cussing.
There you go.
Her and I both cuss, and I, I'm a couple times I'm like, I'll be cussing at the situation, but we're arguing, so I'm like, I'm sorry, because that's a real quick way for things to fly off the table. And I got girls, man. I'm like, they need to know that whenever you get an argument, that is not an excuse to be disrespectful at all times.
There you go.
And there's times where I've had to sit there and say, I come back later, but I'm sorry I said that to you. I was in the wrong. Not about the argument, but how I treated you. And she's like, no, it's fine. Like, no, it's not. Because, and I told her, like, the same thing with my kids. Like, if you were anyone else, I would smack you real fast. Like, I don't care what kind of guy you are, small guy, woman, or I don't care. So I'm not gonna let that to myself, and I'm definitely not my kid. But there's also been a time where I've had to tell my wife we had to go somewhere else. I was maybe getting on to my daughter, and she kind of corrected me a little bit, and I had to pull her to the side and be like, don't ever do that against me. Don't ever do that to me because I'm talking to my daughter and this is my reason why. You can we can pull me to the side, but not in front of her. You and I are unit. I'll go and apologize. And I end up winning, going and apologize. But I was like, when we're doing this one, this is how it's going to be. This is my daughter. You will not do that against me to my daughter. And at the same time, have to tell my daughter too, maybe on a different argument, the way I talked to your mom was incorrect. This is not how you do it. I can admit a fault in both ways. We're both not perfect. Right. But one thing is going to happen is I'm still going to love her and she's still going to love me. We might be upset. Like you said, we might be having an argument. That's fine. It's going to, like, they happen all the time in a sense of like over a marriage, not like every day. That's not a good sign, but you know what I mean? Like, they're going to happen. You live with somebody every day. There's a bound to be something that they're like, all right, I'm a little annoyed with you today. You're on your phone too much. You're on this, or, you know, whatever. But I think as long as for us, we have ground rules that I'm going to treat you with respect, even if I'm angry at you, because I still love you. Yeah. Then I need to make sure that I'm exhibiting that at the highest level possible, especially as the man of the house.
Yes, and you literally just described leadership. That's what it looks like. That's what the ability to across the board lower and raise yourself across the board with people in the home. That's what leadership is. Like, you being man to say, hey, I was wrong for the way I spoke to you in that moment, but I meant what I said. But my tone, my tenor, the way I did it, maybe it wasn't right. And you be able to lower yourself to your children's level, be like, hey, dad had a moment. Yeah, these things happen. And I think that's absolutely amazing right there. And the problem with most people is that they don't have that. You have most couples, they're like dogs humping each other, man. They're just trying to dominate one another in these, you know, in these power dynamics and these power hierarchies, and it doesn't work. That's why they had to come see us. They got to come. We would not have a business if it wasn't for people that didn't know how to talk to each other or didn't know how to do these things. But it starts with, one, it starts at home, how you were raised. Two, it starts with someone like you who has done the work. And there's so many people that don't want to do the work, Mike. I know you're big into like motivation, and you know, there's so many people that just don't want to do the work. And I don't understand, why would you bring children into the world? Why would you bring another person into your life if you're not willing to do the work? Just be alone. If you want to ruin your own life, hey man, it's a free country. But don't ruin nobody else's life, and don't ruin the kids' life. And then we got more broken people in the world. That's just my philosophy.
I want to kind of lean into something that you said I thought was really powerful, Mike. When you were saying you were having the conversation with your wife, like you were saying not to come between my correction to my daughter, like that's my correction to her. We have a lot of couples that we've talked to that do just that. Dad can be correcting or disciplining one of the children or all of the children, and mom interjects in front of the children. And that always becomes a source of tension in their relationship, because it undermines the authority that the father has in the relationship of the children. What advice would you have for maybe a man that's dealing with something like that? He's dad. He's, you know, laying the law down, and maybe mom doesn't like his approach. Maybe mom doesn't like, and he's not doing anything harmful to the children. He's literally being a father, and fathers are going to do things differently than a mother would. That's why you need both. But what is your advice for a man that is kind of struggling with having that authority with his children, and mom or wife kind of or even girlfriend? I mean, I can be married, but she comes in and basically cuts him off at the knees in front of the children. What would you say?
I heard this from, I think, Steve Harvey. And what he was saying, he was talking to a woman who asked that same question, kind of like, you know, the same scenario. And he goes, and something along, I'm paraphrasing it, so if I butcher this, I apologize. But in the same sense of like, do you love your husband? Yes. Do you respect him? Yes. Then why wouldn't you let your husband teach his replacement, teach his next coming? Yep. And so I'm the same way with my wife. Like, she'll get onto my daughter. I might think it's a little harsh, but I'm like, I want you to be like her because I love her. Yep. So in that sense, like, take it. Now, there might be a time where I might interject because I'm like, okay, maybe we're not getting to training anymore, like with correction or any of that stuff. Now we're just fighting. But in the same sense, I would sit there and say that, have that conversation with the spouse, the significant other, the wife, you know, and let them know. And I also, I think this is something guys will never do. Hey, look, man, you hurt my feelings. Like, real talk, man. Like, the way you did that for me, it hurt my feelings. And I say that because if you're not maybe emotionally intelligent enough to, in a moment of an argument, to be like, look, I understand what you were doing, and I understand what I was doing wrong, but please don't do that. If you can't have that kind of cool head, man, you got to wait an hour or two or something like that and be like, hey, look, you hurt my feelings the way you did. But the truth is, I'm doing it for this reason. And a lot of times that's really what it is, man. I'm doing this. I'm harsh on my daughter. Why? Because I'm the father. I need to make sure something egregious happens. If she talks back to my wife, she gets talked to like a grown man real fast and let her know. And I thought, don't you dare talk to my wife like that. Like, you're not going to talk to my wife. And you know, someone else might be like, that's really, my mom cried hearing me talk to her like that. And I was like, no, because nobody is going to talk to my wife like that. Right. And so I say that because, like, I think, you know, it's sometimes not just the mom, sometimes it's the grandma, sometimes it's other people trying to get in. And I think the man needs to sit there and be like, no. One thing I've told my wife a lot, and I tell other people too as well, is like, I have to look myself in the mirror at night. And if I know I'm doing right, I don't care if I have to go against the whole world. Hopefully it's not against my wife, but if it's going against what she thinks, I got to do what's best for my family, and I got to do what's best for what I think at all times. And sometimes I'm the only person who thinks that. And if I don't have my own self-confidence, my own like reflective tools, meditation, all these things, breathing, if I don't have enough of that, then I don't think I have the backbone to stand up and say I'm right and the whole world's wrong. So long story short, man, communication as well.
Yes.
I love it.
Like you said, the ability to step in and so we have a daughter. My daughter will be 17 in July. July 3rd, she'll be 17. Them teenage years are crazy. And like, so there'll be times where like they're doing their thing, and I, like you said, I've never been a teenage girl. I don't know what they go through. I don't understand their world, you know. So I let her. Like I tell people, I don't raise my daughter. I'm an example to my daughter. I don't raise my daughter. She's raised. I raise my sons. She's raising our daughter, because how can she can't raise a man and I can't raise a woman, but I'm an example to my daughter. And so if she gets a little, she gets a little out of pocket, I'm quick to step in. I got no problem with that, you know, but the truth is that I have to, if I'm going to do that, I have to have a track record. I can't be over here whooping on her mom's head, disrespecting her mom, and then coming in and trying to raise her. That don't even make sense. And so a lot of parents struggle with their teens because they're incongruent. The daughter will see the mom disrespecting the husband, and then the daughter tells the mom tells the daughter, "Don't disrespect me, or don't disrespect." Well, you disrespect him all the time. You disrespect me. So it's really important that you know, you cross your T's and dot your I's as a parent. If you're going to be that authority in the home, you got to do that. What advice would you give Mike for raising a daughter? You've already raised one, so he's in the process. What would you think? What's something you think?
Just be patient. It's a lot of ups and downs, a lot of emotions. Teaching a young girl how to navigate her emotions is just a lesson that I think many women still struggle with, because emotions are so volatile at times, and they're so fickle, and they change like the wind blows one way to blow another. And sometimes that's your emotions, and you have to be able to, even as a woman, be able to tap into some logic from time to time. You're not just flying by the seat of your pants by your emotions. So just be patient, and lots of talks with your daughter is going to be vital. And then there's a time that your wife will probably notice, and she's probably experiencing it now, even in the preteen time, that the daughter needs to be around mom a lot. Like, they need that time. And then it's like 1 minute they want to be around you and hug you and be all up on you, and then next it's like, leave me alone, I'm independent, let me try my thing. And that's just kind of the ebbs and flow. So as a couple, y'all have to have your date nights, and even as an individual, do those things. Like you said, meditation, deep breathing. For me, I do yoga. That helps me, keeps me grounded. I journal. I do different things just for me. But as a parent, you have to kind of be ready to embrace them when you can, and then also let them go when it's necessary. And that's the tough journey. And with a girl, especially, just be patient. Be patient.
I would say I'm setting the standard for my replacement. Like, that's how I look at my daughters. Like, my replacement, and that's the reality. It sucks. As a girl, I have a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old, and looking at both of them, and that was actually one of the most pivotal moments in my life in 2018, of looking forward and being like, when I die, what do my girls say about me? What do people say about me to my daughters? And what I really did was I looked at it and said, I want them to marry this kind of guy. And I had to look at myself and be like, I don't measure up to that guy. And so ever since then, I'm like, okay, I'm that guy who picks up trash. I'll be like, yes, ma'am. You know, it's raining. My wife, I will open her door no matter what. It's raining. I don't care. The door gets opened. That's just how we do things, because I'm looking at something and saying, like I told my wife the other day, we had this conversation. I want to be able to sit there and say, do it the way I did it. And like, again, track record, like you said earlier, track record. Here's how I've been doing it for so long. It's just what I've been doing. We know I open the door. We know I say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. You know, we just know that. And we know I don't cuss at my wife. We know I don't hit her. I don't touch her. I don't do anything. And if anything, I'm uplifting, right? Like just like how you were, boom, talking about your wife. I'm her cheerleader. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what my girls are looking at me, sitting there saying, if I pick a mate, man, he needs to be something like that, because I'm trying to set that bar as high as possible.
Amen to that, brother.
That's so powerful.
I believe in that. I really do.
Yeah.
So any young man that walks in that door that wants to have my daughter's hand, he's got to go through me first. He's got to go through me first. But it's important for me as a man. I'm not the guy that dancing at the at the table with the shotgun. You know how they do, TVs and stuff like that. But I want him to understand, and I want her to understand that this young man has a standard to live up to, and I'm trying my best to make that standard every day, that bar high. Because if I can teach her that this is the way a man's supposed to treat a woman, like the way I treat her mom, the way she sees me move through society, like you said, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, being respectful, being a pillar of the community, not perfect, none of us are, but if I can instill that in her head, this is the way a man moves through the world, then I'm confident that her mom can teach her how to pick the right man, because her mom picked a good man. And so,
well, I'll say happy Father's Day to y'all early.
Thank you.
I think that's phenomenal, because I can tell you, being a young girl who left home, who my parents divorced when I was 12, and there was a gap of time where I didn't have that covering of a father in the home. And I can tell you that a blueprint was missing, but y'all have just identified, you guys are setting the blueprint for your daughters, for our daughter. You're setting the blueprint. So when it's time to actually find a mate, she's got that. Your daughters have that blueprint that they can go from. But I can tell you how frustrating and scary it was to not have a blueprint. And so you're picking every Tom, Dick, and Harry, and you're like, oh, he's cute, he's fine. And you're realizing, like, I don't have a blueprint. So I've got to figure out real quick, what type of man do I want to be, in a relationship with? And I went through a lot of turmoil because I just didn't know. And the blessing is that your daughters and our daughter, they have that blueprint. They can see, this is how dad moves. This is how men treat women. This is how a man provides and, all those things. They have that. And that is such a blessing. I'm telling you, it will save them a lot of heartache and a lot of turmoil and pressure to try to figure things out. Because as a girl that left, that's why I ran into the military, because I needed structure. I was around chaos. I'm like, well, let me go to the Air Force. And all my family like, no, don't do that. Just stay here and work. And no, if I stay here, I'm going to be one of y'all.
That's scary too. You see the future. I think that's amazing. Like when you start looking at the future and you're like, I don't want that. Like,
yeah.
I don't want this. And it's terrifying, because if you look at it, and I think a lot of high schoolers go through this when they're looking ahead and they're looking at their parents and being like, I don't want the life you want. And it sucks as a parent to be like, do it the way I did it. And they're like, I don't want that. Like, your life sucks. I don't want nothing to do with what you got going on. And you're talking about marriage, and like, you don't even like my own mom. Like, y'all don't even hang out together. Y'all don't communicate. Like, I think that's so much more important of how people are looking at the life. Like Osho says, he's a philosopher, saying that like, the reason why we have so much anxiety is because we can't tell the future. So we only play what we know, which is our history. So if all we know is just horrible, all these things, that's what the future looks like to us. And that's why we have so much anxiety. But the moment we have a good power backlifting, the future looks bright. And that's why most of the times our anxiety just goes away, because the future seems hopeful. And if not, what do we got to look forward to?
Well, we could talk about this all day, Mike. This is our wheelhouse. So we could talk about relationships and kids all day long. But I want to make sure, because you're just a wealth of knowledge, man. I really appreciate, and I truly believe that nobody comes into your life without a reason. And I'm just so thankful that I met you through Izzy, and just how you have kind of like I said, you literally were a catalyst for me, us to understand, like, you challenged me. Yeah. And I'm not typically a man that people challenge in any aspect. Typically, I'm the one doing the challenging, but you were like, why not just start? Why not just start? And when you said that, it really sparked, something in me. I was like, even if it was just my competitive nature, like, well, shoot, he's right. I had no retort. And so we did, and we're doing well. We're trying to figure this thing out, figure this algorithm out, but we love it. We absolutely love it. But I just want to say thank you publicly, for challenging me, because that's what I need as a man. Typically in my life, in my line of work, and in my circle, I'm the guy who has all the answers, so people think, at least. but I need to be challenged just like anybody else. And I just want to thank you as a man for challenging me. And it's been a great journey. We've been in YouTube almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we're still we're right there at the cusp of that 1K, trying to get there. But it's a lot, but it's a lot of fun, and we've met some really cool people throughout that. So I just want to say thank you.
Absolutely.
But I want to shift a little bit. I want to segue into, because you do know so much, and as you well know, our economy is not doing great right now. What are some things you're seeing as you read the tea leaves? I know you do day trading or something like that or whatever, but what are some things you're seeing as you read the tea leaves? And I'll just let you go. You can. I don't know nothing about this world, so you go right ahead.
No problem, man. And first, I'll say, like, man, I believe in being a cheerleader for others, because, man, like, where I'm at right now is just because others put me here. Like, others help me out, others give me advice, and so why not? I'm real big belief in this is a really amazing life, amazing world, but you got to pay it forward. So why not? Like, it feels good. Every time we talk, we always have an amazing interaction. So I'm almost selfish, because if I just pour into you, you pour into me, we always guarantee we're going to have a great time talking. So
absolutely,
it's like a selfish, like, why don't you just be nice to others? Like, if someone's mean to you, okay, I just won't talk to you no more. Cool.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the U.S. economy, man, just one thing we got to look about it. We start looking about the inflation of how we're going up, right? And so I'm not going to get very technical terms, because I think that's when people's eyes roll over. And as you can tell, I love this stuff, so I can really talk about it all day. What I will sit there and say is, what we're finding out is that what happened in the pandemic, there is consequences for that one, and they're kicking the can down the road, and we're trying to figure that out. We go into so much debt. We're about to pass now of how much debt we're paying versus the defense bill. And defense bill is one of the biggest we have in the entire world. So just imagine how much we spend on bombs and missiles. We're going to end up paying more in debt than we do, because we like $34 trillion in debt.
Oh, I didn't know that one. I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. And so it doesn't take a genius to like hear that and be like, there might be some problems ahead, right? So there can only be so much for that one. And so what I would tell people is, like, we get to this point of like economics and all this stuff, and there's people with doctorates and they get it wrong too. But what I would say is, like, the most important part about the economic status is understanding that your dollar is losing value, and you need to figure out how to invest. You need to figure out, how do you make a dollar into two? How do you make a two into four? There's actual term for that. It's called compound interest. So it's like, how do you make a dollar? How do you turn it into two? And the second part is, the way you should know about, is not only compound interest. I think Einstein calls it the eighth wonder of the world, or the ninth. So even he thought it was an amazing thing. The second part is the rule of 72. How long does it take to make 1,000 to 2,000? So let's say we're investing in stocks, and you get a 10% return on an annual basis. So every year you make 10%. It will take you 7.2 years to make 1,000 to turn into 2,000. Free. You don't have to do nothing. You can just put it there, in 7.2 years, it'll be 2,000. So the fact that and the reason why I'm really big into this one, as in money goes, like, money doesn't get tired. Money keeps working. It isn't called a day. It's not off. It's not, hey, Memorial Day. It's not like, I got to take some time off. I got vacation. I got sick. None of that. It doesn't get called for jury duty. It works for you nonstop. And I think a lot of problems with a lot of us, and mainly, especially, like, you know, our backgrounds of, like, our people, in a sense, are historically the ones that are like this one, but everyone's affected by it, is that we just don't understand how money works. And kind of what Marcus said earlier, like, you get into a room and if you know finances, people look at you a different way, because you're that's a big deal. It's almost as big as strength, right? Depending on where we're at.
Yeah.
Social status, big status.
Right? Number one or number two. Like, it's, you know, if someone's like, oh, that's a finance guy, people are like, hey, so what do you think about the market? That's the first thing anybody will always ask, because they're like, I don't know. And so there's so much going into it, and you don't have to be an expert. That's the best part about it. You don't have to be an expert in the stock market. Warren Buffett always says, like, just leave it, buy and hold it, man. If you buy and hold on a general basis, you can do it. What my always thing to anyone in there is, how do you take $100? How do you make that into 101, 102, 103? There's actually ways you can do that. It's involving, and then the most important part, though, we could say that, but the second part I would sit there and say to y'all is, do y'all think the U.S. government is going to go down or go up as far as the economy? Or do you think what do you think it will always do?
I think it's going to go down. That's just maybe I'm just being bleak. What do you think?
I don't know.
Historically, 76% of the time it goes up. Around 23 or something like that, it goes down, and sometimes it goes sideways. But historically speaking, if you look at it, it always goes up. Why? Think about it. What would the U.S. do if it went down? It's bad for our economy. It's bad for our political. It's so bad for it. It's almost naturally rigged to always stay up. So if you think about it from that perspective, why wouldn't you just invest in the U.S. economy? Like, if you hear about the rigs, people talking about the U.S. dollar and stuff like that, like, we're big boys. Like, we're the big boy on the block. We're not going to go down without without a fight. So my personal opinion is, right? Like, I invest in the U.S. government. One, a patriot, love that stuff like that. Two, the game's rigged. Like, there's so many billionaires that invest in all this stuff. They're not going to let the stock market crash. Like, it might happen, a very fluke time frame, but you would just invest more. You know what I mean? So that's my opinion on that one. The economy. What I would tell you about the U.S. economy, my personal opinion, I don't know. Sometimes it goes down. It had a down week last week, but last week was pretty good. And the week before that, it was down for a little bit. But if you look on it from a technical terms, it was just consolidating. It had a big push, but it had all-time highs last week. You know what I mean? And what I'll say is, the last thing is, if you're watching people on the news, look at their track record. The guy, Michael Berry, he's a doctor, and he predicted a 2008 crash. Anytime he does anything, everybody's always reporting on it, right? What they didn't report is on 2021, he got that wrong. 2022, he got it wrong. He admitted he was wrong in 2023. And so what happens is, I always say something's going to crash. Eventually it will happen. And then that's when I highlight that the most. I was able to predict this, but you didn't predict the 2020 this. You didn't predict in 2018 the market was going to do this. You can't, right? Last year was an amazing year. How many people are celebrating saying I said the market was going to go up 24.2%? I think it went up. They always bet on the bottom. So.
Got you. So I have a personal question for you, Mike. So my sons, like I said, they're 22, 20. They're hardworking young men. Both of them in school. They work. They go to school. They stay out of trouble. And they're trying to get into like investing. They're trying to like. So
I think they use an app.
So yeah, I told them to download the Robinhood app. Just something to get them, $20 here, $20 there. Just something to get them kind of in the game. Now I'm an old head. I'm still trying to figure these things out myself. I didn't grow with money. None of those things. So everything I have to learn on my own. So was that a good suggestion for them to have something like that where they could just throw $20, $30 a paycheck or $100 a paycheck into some stocks? Maybe they win, maybe they lose. But was it a good suggestion, or would you have a better one?
I'd say it depends, right? So everything depends, because you never know, is that the spark that gets them into investing? Like, there's so many different ways to do this one. And that's what I don't like when it comes to investing. People say you got to be this way. Right. It's messy like everything else. It goes up, it goes down, it goes sideways. Sometimes you're right. Sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes you are right. You were just a little bit too early. So you're wrong, right? Like, what I would say to someone who's interested in that one is, and this is what I got my little girls doing. I'm trying to understand, how do you get someone like that one? But if they do, the easiest way for them to become millionaires by the time they're 65, if you go to invest, I think at .gov or compound, it's a compound calculator. If you go there, if you put $200 for the next 45 years, you will see how much you'll make. And if y'all want to do it really quickly, please do it. You'd be amazed at how much money, and that's all you did was put $100 a year.
What is
it? $50 a year.
Yeah.
What's the website again, Mike?
Let me look it up real quick for y'all. I'll look that up. But there's so many different things. Compound interest calculator. Yeah, so it's investor.gov. .gov, it's by the government, so you can know that for a fact.
Okay.
And so I'll do a couple really quick scenarios with y'all, just so y'all can see how easy it is to invest. Because one thing that we really need to teach people is that investing is really simple. And the more boring and more simple it is, the actual better you have for success. What I tell people when I teach them about ETFs and index funds, I say, hey, this is only going to take about an hour of your time frame once a year. That's it. Can you do that? Like, yeah, of course I can. But hey, can you put $50 in there? Like, yeah, of course I can. Okay, let's go through that one. So our initial investment, we're going to say, is $0, but we're going to put in $50 every year. Let's say the individual is 20, for an example. So they're going to be doing this until they hit 65. So 25 years or 45 years, 45 years at a normal interest rate, the normal S&P, which is the 500 of the biggest U.S. companies. So the biggest and the best. There's over 12,000 stocks. These are the 500 best ones of U.S. economy, right? So the big boys. They average a return around from 10 to 12%. I'm going to say 8% because we're going to now calculate for taxes and inflation a little bit, right?
Right.
So 8%. I'm going to compound that every year. Now, putting in $50 in every month for the next 45 years. How much do you think we would make at the age of 65?
I'm thinking 1.
Oh, 50 a month. Well,
I'm thinking $1 million. I'm thinking.
I say 700K. I don't want to say $1 million.
So $231, right? 231K. That's for just 8%. I'm going on a very low basis. If we go back to 10%, what they do for the S&P, 431K. So just 2% gave us 200K more in the span of that one. Now we're just doing that one. I always go for contingencies. I go for like always low. We're saying that's $50 a month. How much are you telling your sons to put into their account?
They put in per paycheck. I think one of them's putting like half his paycheck in the savings.
How much do you think? How much do you think would be a good amount?
Let's say 200. Let's say about 250. About 250 a paycheck.
All right, 250. We got 250 every month. And that's just low ball, 45 years, 8%, 1.1 million.
Whoa.
1.1. Investor.gov. It's a government website. I'm not making it up. It's no thing like that. You can go there and play with numbers. That's at 8%. Now we do 10%. What the U.S. government is normally what we do. 2.1 million.
Wow.
Now, the one thing I want to show parents, grandparents, anyone that you care about, let's do it for a brand new baby. So I got a brand new daughter, child, son, or I got a grandkid. And I put $1,000. That's it. I'm only going to touch this one time. All right, $1,000. I'm going to do it for 65 years. And it's going to be at 8%. So it's going to be more. How much do you think if I put in $1,000 when the baby is born and they turn 65? How much do you think will be in their account?
$4 million. Let's go big.
Go big.
60. That one is that's 148K. Just one time, right?
That's a one-time shot though. That's crazy.
So we're saying I'm putting $1,000. I'm never going to touch it again, right?
Never going to touch it again. Wow. Okay.
Now we're talking about 65. It's like 490K.
Yeah.
After now, the part is the amazing part. If you have and so the reason why I say these low numbers, because a lot of us people cannot afford to put in, $10,000. Now the trick is if you put in $10,000 for someone who's 16, and you put it in for 35 years at 8%. Now this is if you have money, your kid turns 16, sweet 16, this and that. We're giving them $10,000. We invest in S&P. They would make. It's coming out weird. 45. They make 319. The reason why I'm saying these numbers, and people are like, hey, that doesn't sound like a lot. That doesn't sound like a lot. But at the same time frame, this is with you not doing nothing, right? This is how we're doing those ones. Mm-hmm. And so we can do that part. But again, this is 8%, the worst thing you can think about. And I can give you a stock right now that made 22%. And if I took that $1,000 investment and it compounded for 65 years at 22%, now that's a lot. That we just jumped up a lot. How much do you think that person will make? That one-time fee.
One time G. What was like 2 something last time? What was? I'll say about. Let's go for 400,000.
410 million.
I'm sorry.
So
he said
right. So the reason why I'm saying all that, the how much it returns actually matters the most, and time. We have enough time, great. And this is at 22%, so this is a little bit harder. Now we drop it down to 15%, which is real easy to do. It's super simple to do. 8.8 million, just that, right? And so what it is finding out what these stocks actually mean. What are some really good ones? And I think that's what people talk about, right? They always talk about, hey, stocks this, stocks that. And people are like, great. You said 22%, you said 15%, 8%. Well, where do I find these at? How do I find these things? What I would sit there and say is the best thing to do is kind of common sense. You're a lot smarter than you think you are, right? What phones do y'all have? Marcus, I don't like the phone you have, but nonetheless.
I have an iPhone.
Okay. By that, we all know that Marcus has an Android, right? He's a green text person. But every time someone has green text, what does that normally mean for that person?
That they're smart.
That they should dream bigger.
Right. They're that problem. But we always say those things. But we know there's so many demands for an iPhone. Even you, Marcus, who doesn't have an iPhone, there's an iPhone thing, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Computers. We know there is a such thing as a Mac, right? Most people have them.
We're on a Mac right now.
Yeah, we're on a Mac.
I'm on one as well, right? So we all have them. My whole household has different things. So at that point, then my sit there and say is, would you not think about how do I invest in this company?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's safe to say it's a good company just from common sense. I look around, everyone I know has one. If they don't, we consider that a problem in society. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
You know, in 2018, we had 327 million people in America. And if you have an Android, we consider you like poor. We look down on you.
Oh yeah, you're ostracized.
Right. So it happens. Everyone's like, you're that. But nonetheless, is we would know that Apple is not a bad company to invest in, right? Like just without even looking at the fundamentals, like how much cash flow they have, you can just guess, right? And then the same thing too, right? We were talking a little bit before this one about AI, right? What are some AI companies that y'all might know about? Everyone knows about ChatGPT, right? Common sense. What company makes the most money off of ChatGPT? Have you heard about like a relationship with them?
No.
Microsoft.
Well, wow.
Right? Okay. Those companies. And how long have they been around? Everyone knows Steve Jobs, right? Bill Gates, all those things. You can invest in those companies, right? So there's so many different things that you could do. Those are two heavy hitters right now. Those are heavy hitter stocks, and you didn't really have to know anything about the stock market. S&P 500, I talked about that one. That's VOO. That's a simple one. That's index fund, or SPY, SPY. That's it. It reflects it up there. It goes down, it goes down too. So those right there are three stocks you can invest in. That's really, like I said, it's not that difficult. I think what happens is we see these people in the suits and we sit there and say, I don't look like you. You talk about the stock market, we can tell you about different things and lose you. That doesn't mean I know more. That just means I know how to confuse you more. That's all that means. So the reason why I say those things is we got to start looking around and they're saying, where's my advantages to this world? We kind of talked about it, alluded to a little bit earlier, but we all have advantages and disadvantages. One of my biggest advantages is knowing that I'm not the smartest person in the world. So I'll just invest, right? And when you said this earlier, Marty's like, well, I don't know this stuff. I still got to learn it. I a little bit disagree with that one because I'm like, leverage it out. That's one thing I'm trying to learn right now is, I don't need to know how to do certain things. I've had people like government contracts. If you know how to get government contracts, that's a very lucrative business. Instead of me learning it, why don't I just pay someone to help me, like to do it for me?
There you go.
Right? Like, but it also comes because I know I have an extreme value as well. Saying, hey, I can help you with the stock market. I can look at your portfolio really quick and tell you, hey, that's really bad. And I can describe it, really break down to you. We want to get nitty gritty. I can show you exactly why I came up with that or that number to buy in or why this is horrible. And so my thing is I love the stock market. But one thing I found out was the compound interest of how I can make money double for me and how I can do those ones. There are certain stocks that can do that for you. The reason why I'm very hesitant to say is because like people might go out and buy it. I don't know if it's the best time to buy for you, or I don't know if you're willing to lose $200 right now, as an example. I don't know your situation, so I wouldn't advise that. But what I'm saying is we got to start looking at this one, do that one, right? We all know Nike, but how many people own it? How many people do? I see families, the whole family's fit out with Nike. It's a one-time transaction deal instead of they're saying, I actually own part of that company and I get dividends from that company. And so that's kind of my biggest thing when it comes to the stock market is, and you don't have to do that. I have a Ford, so I buy Ford stock. You don't have to do that. What I'm just trying to sit there and say is look at it beyond, let me just wear these shoes and sit there and say, how can I own a piece of that company? Because if everyone's like me, how can I make money off of them after them buying it?
Yes.
Okay, Mike, I got something for you.
Oh, here we go.
Help us old heads out. Let's say you're 40 plus and you didn't do anything with the stock market and you didn't invest. But you're like, okay, I probably at least got a good 20, maybe more, whatever the Lord says, years left of living. What can we do to kind of take advantage of the remainder of our days, like to invest? Like, so if it's someone that's in their 40s plus and they haven't invested, obviously we don't have the gift of time like a child would or, an infant, like you were explaining. What can you do if you're seasoned, but you still want to try to jump in and make a splash and have something as legacy to leave behind? That's
a really good question. A large portion of our viewers, the male demographic, are 30 plus.
Yeah.
So that will help a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know the statistics on it, but we're living longer and we're going to live longer. So the idea of 20 years of your 40 is very unlikely nowadays, right? So we're saying 75, 80, and we're looking more like towards the 80s every time frame. So you definitely need something that's going to keep growing itself. So one thing I would sit there and say is, one, study what compound interest is. Why? You need to learn how do you make 1,000 into 2,000? Because 2 goes into 4, 6, 8, and it doubles. Now, when you start making, you get 10,000, that goes into 20,000. You make 100,000 a lot faster than starting at 1,000. And so it's just learning those things too. You can pass on your stocks if you need to. I mean, you could have it where you sit there and say, like, look, I have a son. You cannot, I will give you my stocks when I pass, but you can't sell them. You can only sell half of them. You have to pass those on to your kids. Now we just had generational where now a kid inherits, stock market, right? They inherit stocks, they become an owner. And so I think it's not looking at it from the perspective of like, how do I take care of me? It's like, how can I make sure the next generation is set up in the third generation and so on? Because now we can understand that a lot of people that are extremely wealthy, yes, they are very smart and intelligent, but some people did it their first time. And you look at them and say, what are you doing to make sure the next generation is wealthy, the third generation and so forth? It's normally a system and process that helps them out. As it is of being a man, of like teaching you how to control your emotions. It's the same idea when it comes to financial literacy. It just so happens there's just a very big difference and disadvantage for a lot of us that were never taught that. True. I'm the person that when I came home and I flipped on the light and it didn't come on, you know what happened? Mom didn't pay the bill. And it was just, it was what it was. You were cool with it. I've had to steal water from the neighbors to take a bath. I wasn't born rich by no means. The same thing that you're doing, which is you're diving deep into like marriage and those things that you don't know so much about. I've just done that with financials. So I'm very, and Marcus says earlier where he was like, hey, you know a lot about a lot of everything. The only reason why is because I was lost. And so I was trying to figure out what was my thing. So I dabbled on this, I dabbled in that. That's the only reason why I'm experienced. It's not because I'm some amazing smart person, because I was really lost. And I found finance, and for the last 2.5 years, this is all I do.
Well, Mike, we can talk all day, man. We just love just sitting at your feet and kind of just learning from you and just having a great dialogue. This is what this is about. Yeah. I love having great conversations, especially in areas that I'm not familiar with. I love talking to people who are passionate, and that's why we started this whole thing. And you embody all those things, man. So we're not gonna waste no more of your Sunday. Go spend time with that beautiful family of yours, man. But we really appreciate you coming on.
Is there anything that you want to plug, Mike, before we end?
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Mike.
No problem. Yeah, so September 13th through the 15th, we have a men's retreat in Texas. So one of my other companies involves a lot of mental health. I help out in nonprofits. One of my companies is we put on men's retreats. So we're putting on a men's retreat for that one. I work for a couple of nonprofits, one called Tomorrow Battalion. It helps veterans and law enforcement and their families really start dealing with different healing modalities. So instead of maybe going to regular therapy, how about we go to a sweat lodge? How about we connect you with a nonprofit that does with ayahuasca? Okay, we'll pay for you to go and do those things. I also help out Duty First, which is a nonprofit that finds, trains, and pairs service dogs for veterans and law enforcement. So my space is all mental health in that realm that I do that like on the behind the scenes in business. I just love finance so much that it's consumed all my life. But yeah, there's multiple things I do from there that we're looking at doing for that.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do, Mike. So I'm going to take, if you can text me all that information and I'll put it in the description under this video once we put it, and how they can reach you or how they can reach out to those organizations, and we'll pub it that way, man.